people are chasing with psychedelics is a brain open window, and here's how to use the real one. So because right now the internet is obsessed with psilocybin, LSD, ketamine therapy and microdosing as the answer to anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, basically everything. And if you've ever listened to one of those podcasts and thought, right, that's it, I need microdosing, this is the part that nobody explains properly. So this morning I had a very real thought. Is learning to count worth a prison sentence? Not metaphorically, not in a dramatic throwaway way, genuinely. Because if you spent any time online recently, you'll know exactly where that thought leads. Psilocybin, LSD, rewiring your brain, unlocking your potential. And when you feel like your brain just won't cooperate, that starts to sound less like a wild idea and more like a reasonable plan. And here's what you'll discover in this week's podcast episode. Why psychedelics such as psilocybin, LSD and ketamine can create a temporary brain open window, and what mechanism they're actually chasing, what BDNF and neuroplasticity have to do with learning mood, and why things don't stick, the closest legal free way to trigger a similar plasticity window, no prison sentence required, and how to use the 30 to 60 minute post-movement window to make therapy tools, learning and habit change land faster. A simple move first, then do the hard work thing protocol that you can run for 6 weeks and save meaningful change in your life. Now, before we continue, I do just need to get you up to speed. So at around 7 years old, there I was in a new classroom in yet another new primary school, while at the same time dealing with being on a new RAF base with new rules and zero friends. And at my old school, where we'd been for a couple of years, things were comfortable and familiar and I had friends. We were learning the 2 times table. Now in this one, the 7s, no warm up, no catching up, just straight in. Every morning, test, and every morning, cross, all those giant red crosses strewn across the entire page long before the red pen was outlawed for being offensive. Then one fateful day, it was my turn to stand up and run through the times table that we'd been learning, and I froze. I got past 7 to 14 and that was it. Nothing. Silence. Then laughter. The person behind me was shouting out, "She used her fingers and she still can't do it." Pointing, laughing, like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. And the look on the disgust on the teacher's face floored me. I stood there holding back tears, praying for the ground to open up and swallow me whole. And that moment didn't just bruise my ego, it wired my brain to treat numbers and pressure like a threat. And here's where the point of this story often gets misunderstood, because when people hear something like that, they automatically think, that must have knocked your confidence. Of course it did. But I also knew it wouldn't be long before we moved again, and I could pretend it never happened, start over without anybody knowing. You see, my potential dance with a lengthy jail sentence has nothing to do with confidence, PTSD style flashbacks, or overwhelming anxiety. This is about processing. And here's the weird contradiction going on in my daily life. So I can build complex ideas, run a successful business, help people overcome extreme trauma, and transform their lives in less than 3 months. But ask me, what time will it be in 47 minutes? And my brain just exits the chat. Full-blown ghosting by the thing that I'm supposed to be relying on. And the best way I can describe it is this. It's like having a GPS that works perfectly, except it refuses to acknowledge that left exists. So you keep going round and round, same route, same loop, not because you're stupid, but because the system can't compute that direction is even possible. So fast forward to this week, I'm indulging in my favourite pastime, binging on new research into mental illness, and Professor David Nutt is on the screen in front of me discussing illegal drugs, so psilocybin, LSD, talking through the neurology and what's happening in the brain during these controlled research-based trips, opening neural pathways, increasing plasticity and helping the brain rewire, all to help ease mood disorders such as treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, etc. And I thought, right, that's it. That's what I need. Because if my brain could just open up for long enough, I could finally get things to stick. Then came the problem. It's illegal and it's inaccessible, and it's definitely not a casual Amazon order situation. Also, there's literally no research being conducted on rewiring pathways for those with specific learning disorders such as dyslexia or dyscalculia. So I found myself here. Do I send Professor Nutt an email and offer myself up as an experiment, find a dodgy bloke and risk a prison sentence, or just accept 35 years after being laughed at in a classroom, I'll never be able to do the 7 times table? Now, I obviously wasn't going to try and flag down the local drug runner on their bicycle, and I also wasn't going to settle for not being able to improve things, so I did what I do. I chased the mechanism, and while digging into the research, something clicked. I noticed that ketamine does something similar but for a shorter window. Now that is legal in the UK but used off license, costs thousands, and comes with a list of side effects long enough to ruin your lunch. Still a potential alternative to spending 7 years inside. But as I followed the trail digging into why these substances are so powerful, I realised something truly profound, because what these substances do isn't magic. They increase BDNF, which is your brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically miracle grow for your neurons, but also enhance neuroplasticity, which is your brain's natural ability to rewire regardless of age. Those drug studies, they're chasing a temporary open window where change sticks faster. Both of these things simply make the brain more open to change, and that's when I went, hold that thought. If the goal is BDNF and plasticity, I don't need prison. I just need my under-the-desk elliptical machine. Because while things like LSD, psilocybin and ketamine sound awesome, exercise is the closest legal-free version of that plasticity window trigger. I know. It's like I just walked up to you and slapped you in your face. And if you've been struggling with anxiety and depression for a while, you're going to kick yourself for every time you ignored the advice to just go for a walk. So let me be crystal clear. I'm not talking about nipping to the shops, and I'm not suggesting you should go for a jog and you'll feel better. But when you understand what happens in the brain, not just in the body, when you exercise, it can radically change your life for the better, because exercise is scientifically proven to change your brain's ability to learn. And you never need to step inside a gym to get the benefits. So here's what the research shows. After moderate levels of movement, your brain becomes more receptive to change, encodes information that you're consuming more effectively, and is more willing to shift patterns. And there's often a relatively short window, roughly 30 to 60 minutes after exercise, where your brain is in its closest natural state to what the psychedelics are trying to create. No 4 a.m. dawn raids by the armed police required. So the issue isn't that people are stupid, is that they're just desperate for change. And when something doesn't stick, the assumption is I need something stronger. But most of the time you don't need something stronger, you need something smarter. And I promise you, your depression, anxiety, and whatever else is going on with your brain, even if you've got one like mine that has a hissy fit every time somebody asks you the time, you don't have a broken brain, you don't lack intelligence, and you don't have to be stuck in a cycle of not getting it and never improving. It's just that you've got a brain that hasn't had the right conditions to change yet. So if you're trying to learn something new, such as that cool new crafting hobby you fancy checking out, or attempting to break a pattern, maybe those new year, new you goals, which have quietly died, or perhaps you're desperate to actually make things stick, i.e. techniques that your therapist gives you, try this. First up, move 15-30 minutes, moderate intensity. Second, do the hard thing next. So therapy, homework, journaling, learning, exposure work, skills practice, whatever it is. Thirdly, protect the window. 30 to 60 minutes after the moderate movement, and absolutely no doom scrolling. Fourth, micro review before bed, 5 to 10 minutes. So this is where consolidation happens and is critical for long-term success. Number 5, repeat for around 6 weeks, because this is the neural embedding phase. And then finally, check in with how things are for you compared to where you were at the start of your journey. So the truth is that you're not the problem. You never were. It's just a timing thing. And I genuinely sat this morning, cup of tea in hand, wondering if learning to count was worth breaking the law. Turns out my brain didn't need drugs. It just needed the right conditions. And while I can't yet confidently tell you what time it will be in 47 minutes, when I do get it right, it feels like I've just cracked the code to the universe, which tells me the most important thing. The ability is there. It always was. So try it tomorrow, move first, then do the thing that you've been avoiding. And FYI, I am not recommending illegal drug use. I'm explaining the mechanism people are chasing and the legal way to get a similar brain open window. So PS, if you want to understand how your brain works so you can stop fighting it and start using it, take the happiness archetype test, because once you know your current state on the capacity curve, changing your life gets a whole lot easier. And the link's in the show notes below. Now PPS, because this one's extra spicy and I do not need a lawsuit. This is educational, not medical advice. And if you're considering ketamine or psychedelic therapy, please speak to a qualified clinician first.